was a trip of a lifetime for the 5 young dairy farmers from around South Australia. Jamie, owner-manager, Barossa Valley. Mel, herd manager, Fleurieu Peninsula. Shane, dairy farm manager, Lower South East. Glenn, family farm manager, Lower Murray. Ty, farm and herd manager, Fleurieu Peninsula. 5 countries in 1 month. And what were their hopes for the iDairy study tour?
The benefits I think I'll experience from being part of the iDairy study tour will be understanding the global market, the global dairy industry, and just how the export industry fits into the overseas markets, and also just understanding where South Australia fits as a dairy industry amongst the bigger picture.
The dairy industry will benefit from the project with the ideas that we're going to bring back and the knowledge that we'll gain from dairies around the world, and I think it shows young farmers the opportunities that we have for our careers in the industry, and it shows young people coming and looking at the dairy industry that it is a good option.
The differences I expect to see will probably be largely related to the climate and the conditions that they are producing or growing their crops and producing the cows in. Also in countries like China and in Chile, I think the difference there from here will be cheap and abundant labour, which will make their production systems more economical and much more efficient.
I think China's going to be large-scale farms, quite out there at the cutting edge to a degree. Sweden, you're going to see very high-tech stuff, but very small farms. They're going to really look after their cows. Almost bath them every day. And Chile's probably going to be in between. You'll probably see some smaller farms, where you're still going to see some very large corporate farms. So that's what I think expects to be the differences.
The differences I'd be expecting to see over there would be on a government support level, and also with training and how they train people and how they go about that, and also on just the industry support levels that they have over there as well.
First stop, China.
Wow, what an eye-opener. Although we entered the country with an open mind, we still received a massive culture shock. Their drive and attitude is amazing. They set their mind to something and it gets done on a large scale.
Although the average dairy herd size in China is quite small, less than 10 cows, we only experience the upper end of the industry, visiting farms up to several thousand head.
The scale of things over there, it was absolutely mind-blowing. The average, I think, dairy farm that we saw was based about 5,000 dairy cows, which just took your breath away really. It's hard to explain, you have to actually see it to believe it.
These large-scale corporate farms are seen as the answer to supplying the growing demand for dairy products and to improve the quality of their milk. Biosecurity is important, as you can see by our outfits.
Although you do have to ask the question about their long-term sustainability with very high input costs and cost of production. However, they do control the supply chain from start to finish, so costs can certainly be absorbed.
Today this factory is the largest one in the world, only produces liquid milk here.
Realising the need to influence young consumers to drink dairy products, they have just signed a huge contract with Disney. This has enabled them to introduce product into school canteens and cafeterias for young children.
They would just seem to be, nothing's too hard or too big, and they just want to do everything on a large scale. And also what surprised me was the big growth in consumption of dairy goods. It has just taken off so much in a short period.
The massive Hellinga dairy farm of the modern dairy farming group housed 10,000 cattle, including 5,000 milkers. The waste from this farm fed a biogas plant for electricity production. It was great to see a system like this operating successfully. We had hoped to see more of these plants on our trip, but the high setup cost makes it unviable for most farms. The huge Yili exhibition farm in Inner Mongolia was built initially to supply milk to the Beijing Olympics. This farm was well set up for visitors, with large glass viewing areas above both the rotary dairy and the twin herringbones. It also included a comprehensive interactive display to educate visitors on all aspects of milk production.
The Yili group also had a strong focus on the environment, and on one of their factories that we visited had many solar panels on that help power the factory.
I found the Yili group, their staff and workers all very proud to work for their company. They were proud to, to have their job and to what they were doing inside that company. Like I found, like all the other milk factories we visited, they all had a goal and they were trying to achieve that goal.
Australian heifer export industry is going to continue to flourish into the future, as space for young stock is minimal in China, as any unused land is under construction or is being utilised for high-yielding maize forage crops.
While the scale of the farms visited was impressive, their high cost of production and continued demand for imported heifers are positives for the Australian dairy farmers.
Okay, next stop was Brussels, which is great for the food. Good chocolate, good beer, good waffles, and it's also the hub for EU decision making. So anyone who wants to keep up with the latest of what's going on within the EU has a representative in Brussels. This includes Dairy Australia. We had meetings with government bodies, including the Department of Agriculture and the Department of the Environment, research bodies and young farmer representative groups such as CEJA, which is the European Council for Young Farmers.
We have 28 member organisations across 23 member states. We represent young farmers under the age of 35. The biggest issue for CEJA is getting young farmers across Europe established. Currently only 6% of European farmers are under the age of 35, and CEJA needs to ensure that young farmers are given the financial and political support they need to become successful and viable, and for more young farmers to be set up across Europe.
Maybe on EU matters, but obviously the experts are...
We met with quite a few EU representatives and just looked over how their subsidies work, and after looking at that, it's a very different model than we have in Australia. It's very, very complex, but one thing we did learn was their farmers do need as much help as they can.
The biggest things that I took out of those meetings was that farmers are, in the EU, like Australia, are getting older. There's not enough young farmers coming into the sector, and it's getting too dear for young farmers to get into any kind of farming, especially dairy. So not just Australia's got the problem, it looks like most of the world's got the same issues of finding the next generation of people to grow crops, and vice versa.
After grazing their way through 2 countries, they hit the Netherlands.
In the Netherlands, there's a public expectation to see cows grazing green grass as part of their country's heritage, and milk companies are paying a premium for that milk. In the Netherlands, support payments are connected to the land, not production, which makes the land very expensive. They have some major environmental challenges with effluent and nutrient loading on water quality. And the milk quota phase out across Europe may also cause some problems and pain for them as well.
Netherlands is one of the most productive dairy industries in the EU. They have smaller farms and currently are under the quota system, which is going to be phased out. We were lucky enough to be hosted by a group of young farmers, and we found plenty in common with their industry, being that they have high costs of investing in farming,
they have trouble finding skilled labour, and they have environmental restrictions.
Ever since the moment that I started with the study in agriculture, I knew that I wanted to be a dairy farmer. Yeah, it's difficult to say it's the only thing that I've ever really liked, and I've done some other things, and it's not like, yeah, it couldn't satisfy me. The most fun thing I think it's the first day you're a plumber, the next day you're a veterinarian, the next day you're a bookkeeper, and it goes on every week and it changes. So you've got to be sort of I don't know how to say, but sort of an expert in very many things, and that's the interesting part. We have a limited amount of hectares to place our amount of manure. The way I see that we have to cope with the problem is through processing that manure and try and make it interesting for other agricultural use here in the neighbourhood.
All of these things are impacting on the future of their industry.
I found in the Netherlands most of the guys make really good quality silage. They have to get it right. It seems it's been, most of their diet is a TMR diet. They need to get those kind of things right, and they seem to nail it. I found across the whole country where we visited anyway. We visited I call it a reasonably automated dairy with two robot milkers, a robot push shitter for the internal barns, and an auto feed pusher, which was quite interesting to see. The guy pretty much only has to do heat detection and feed out, and the robots clean up after them and push the feed up to the cows in their TMR system and milks the cows. That was quite interesting to see the whole different bits of the puzzle come together. You see that on internet and catalogues and stuff, but to see someone buy the whole lot and run it. Visited Wilco, who's the president of the Dutch Young Farmers Group, and it was nice to see a bit of the old mixed with the new. They had the barn was somewhere over 100 to 120 years old, with a nice little 18 rotary internal rotary with. Then at the back they developed a brand new effluent system to store their effluent, then to be able to irrigate out through the summer months when they're allowed to, without using tractors and things like that. It was just good to see, cutting down on costs and burning more fuel.
We're also lucky to see an alternate income stream for dairy farmers, which is leasing part of their land to tulip growers. They can do this once every 7 years, and we saw one of the most amazing flower growing facilities I think we would ever be likely to see. You would never look at a tulip the same again. There is, similar to dairying, so much work that goes into producing a high quality flower that we just don't see. We just expect good flowers. It was a great example of an enthusiastic farmer who was committed to growing his business and producing a world-class product.
A big market for Dutch dairy farmers is handmade cheeses using raw unpasteurised milk. This gives them the chance to value add to their milk.
How you say this? Caraway seed or cumin? Cumin. In Australia? Sorry, what? Cumin. Cumin or caraway?
Caraway.
Caraway.
You couldn't go to the Netherlands without trying their cheese. We visited a boutique cheesemaker whose business was based on value adding their product.
The big ones, it's harder to make cheese than the small one. Yeah, the small cheeses go into the salt water.
Yep.
And the salt is very quick inside.
Okay.
When the salt is getting into the center of this one, the damage is already done.
Okay.
And with the small cheeses, there are less problems.
They utilise contractors for work including mixing feed to manage their workload. Weberhoven Research Farm was a highlight of the Netherlands visit. They based their farm on running with the upcoming EU rules. Their research was also focused on shed design, incorporating robots, flooring types, feeding and transition diets of cows. Like our research centres, they're also forced to consolidate their resources. Technology was being adopted on farms in the Netherlands, with robots being used for jobs like milking cows, feeding, pushing up the feed, cleaning the sheds and feeding calves.
Next up, Sweden.
Sweden is one of the most affluent countries in the EU, and they pride themselves on having environmentally sustainable and profitable farming.
We have a lot of water, the climate is very good, it's not so warm, there's no heat stress and so, and we have land compared to Denmark or Holland. But the main thing is to see what is the capability in technical, biological, economic terms, and how much is developed about how we look on the running the farm. And now especially we have a task to see how an old generation will let the farm goes to younger, instead retire themselves and the farm. So if they keep the land and retire themselves from the farm, it's very difficult for young people to take over the farm and create what we think we have good opportunities to be a natural country for meat production in Europe.
They have approximately 350,000 dairy cows, with around 85% of those herd tested.
We went to the Dealervale farm in Hammer. It is a 100-year-old, old-fashioned dairy barn. These days, the complex is used for research and training and developing new innovations. It was also the first time we had a chance to get our hands dirty. We all got involved in milking in the old dairy, which was all new for us.
You bring the cups to the cows don't come to you. Getting down on all fours and trying to milk was a bit of an experience.
And it was much harder than it looked. A few hours later and we'd finished milking the 30-cow herd.
And also in the farm they had a automated silage feeder and concentrated feeder that come through every 7 hours and dispense feed in front of each cow as by the ear tag had on it, and do a loop and come back out and refill behind the doors and come back out every 7 hours, or I think it was. We found that Dealervale guys quite excited about the new robot rotary being built down in Tassie, which is meant to be commissioned in March of 2012. So they were quite happy to talk about that with us and how they were quite excited that it was coming into Australia, and hopefully how that was going to help Australian dairy farmers move forward in the future with labour issues and things like that.
Forestry also provides a significant part of the agricultural industry in Sweden. In Sweden, all animal health care treatments are prescribed by vets, and all the records are used to provide farmers with detailed animal health traits when selecting sires. The red breeds are still dominant in Sweden for their high fertility and fewer health problems. We also had the opportunity to meet a representative from Arla Foods, which is a farmer-owned co-op which collects a large portion of Sweden's milk.
We're both a global and a local company, and being a global company here in Sweden means that we have a lot of exciting products that are coming from other countries, and we also have a big possibility to put a lot of money into product development. And that gives us an opportunity here in Sweden in the local market, but then international as well, since we got our roots in Sweden and Denmark with really good quality products that we can expand into different markets, such as, for example, the Middle East or US or Russia, etc. Our main thing that we want to do is to give the farmers the highest possible price for their milk. and obviously we're really expanding right now. So for me, the vision and the goal is that we can really expand our core markets and get into new areas for our milk products. But in the end, obviously, it's paying the farmer the highest price possible.
Young Swedish farmers are adopting robot technologies mainly from the local DeLaval company and incorporating it into their existing farms.
We have 185 cows today, but we soon is supposedly coming up to 200 cows. Yeah, in this milking house we stay now, we have milking robots, two DeLaval's milking robots, and we have old system with the tie-up system with 40 cows.
They're also using opportunities for off-farm work to provide extra income, such as snow ploughs or hoof trimming.
Spent a couple of days in Stockholm talking to the Swedish Dairy Board, covering areas from AI, herd tests through to biogas, the bigger problems like ageing population of the dairy farmers, the decreased milk production from the country, how they have to buy in more milk and cheese. They just had a butter shortage there the month before we got there, so it's becoming a serious issue where they actually can't supply their own people and they can't buy it in. So yeah, they've got the same issues as we do in different areas, but a lot of issues like their population's getting older and they're not producing as much milk.
And last but not least, Chile.
After a quick visit to Santiago, we flew south to begin our farm visits. The Ancali operation is divided into 3 or 4 separate farms, specialising in different aspects of dairy farming. The first farm in Los Angeles was the dry cow and calf rearing property, with 700 cows calving a month.
Here in Ancali, we got around 8,000 cows. And now we are on a farm that we have all the pre-calving and calving cows. Are you impressed with the amount of people that are working here?
What do you think, Glenn?
It's pretty good.
Good setup?
Pretty well run.
The main dairy property, milking over 6,000 cows, has a huge feed storage area, including the largest maize silage stack we had ever seen, 35,000 tonne. Wow, this place feels like home. Lush green clover and ryegrass-based pastures. Attention to detail on an extremely large scale was super impressive. Ancali Farms is one of Latin America's largest and most modern dairy plants, and it's also one of South America's largest privately owned dairy farming businesses. Again, big farming systems using TMR feed base in low rainfall areas to pasture-based systems where water is plentiful and volcanic soils are common. South America is still looking at increasing production with a target to double production figures in the near future. After Ancali, we drove further south to Osorno to see some high rainfall dairy farming together with consultants from Best Fed Chile. Chile has lots of similarities to New Zealand. This is why the locals refer it to a Chiwi farming system. Chile is a country that has high hopes and aspirations for the dairy industry, and with what we saw, we have no doubt they will achieve these goals.
One of the things that surprised me in the Chile dairy farms we visited this week was the way the dairies were set up quite well. Their land is very good, and the rainfall they get is pretty good too.
The two main things that surprised me about the Chilean dairy industry was the quality of some of the farmland with the rainfall that they have, and it looked like it had a fair bit of potential. And also the other thing that surprised me about Chile was the growth they'd had in milk production. They seem to have had a rapid increase and where they've come from not that long ago.
From the trip I learnt quite a few innovative things that would be applicable to our farm. We run a TMR feed system here and we've seen quite a lot of mixer wagon setups, feed sheds, and I think we can gain quite a few things from what I've seen to bring back here to make our farming system more efficient.
One thing to take away from the trip was that the best farms were the ones that asked, what do you think we can do better? So I think we need to remember not to stop looking for how we can improve things on our farm just because we're doing well. We need to keep on looking for the next improvement.
The farming systems that we run here in Australia are extremely efficient. Every single farmer that's still in industry and farming today should be really proud. Times have been tough over the last 10 or 20 years, prior to me even working on a farm. But things like drought have come into it, deregulation. So farmers have been forced down the track to become efficient so their business can remain sustainable, so they can supply food and dairy products to the public. But yeah, it's again, Australian dairy farming should be extremely proud of what they've achieved in tough times with little to no government support or subsidies. So yeah, well done to everyone.
The Australian dairy industry is a fantastic industry to be working in. It's got a great future ahead, and as what we've seen around the world, we are world class.
I'm just very proud to be involved in the Australian dairy industry. We do things very well compared to other parts of the world. We're just very efficient and very environmentally conscious in the way that we operate here.
So having seen so many different farms and so many different systems around the world, I think there's nowhere I'd rather dairy farm than Australia. I think we're very lucky here.